Emily Thompson walked her German Shepherd along the familiar sidewalks of Oakwood, the evening routine that had brought them both comfort since Luna first joined their family 3 years ago. The front door of their colonial home burst open as John stormed out, face contorted with rage and financial papers clutched in his trembling hands, shouting that the dog had to go, they couldn't afford to keep her anymore. 6 months later, as Emily volunteered at Second Chance Haven Animal Shelter, she froze before a kennel where a familiar German Shepherd cowered in the corner, its police service tattoo visible beneath the thinning fur, the revelation about Luna's heroic past and her father's hidden connection to the dog made her blood run cold. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. Oakwood, Pennsylvania had always been the kind of small town where neighbors knew each other's business and helped without being asked. But this winter had changed things. The snow fell earlier than usual, blanketing the struggling town in frigid white as factories closed and "for sale" signs multiplied across front yards like invasive weeds. The Thompson house stood on Maple Street, a 2-story colonial with peeling white paint that Sarah kept promising to refresh when things got better. Inside lived John Thompson, a former police officer now working security at the local mall, his wife Sarah, who taught 3rd grade at Oakwood Elementary, and their 16-year-old daughter Emily, whose love for animals had defined her since childhood. The 4th member of their household until recently was Luna, a 7-year-old German Shepherd with intelligent eyes and a dignified bearing that hinted at a noble past. The economic downturn had hit Oakwood hard, but few families suffered as dramatically as the Thompsons. John's hours had been cut, and Sarah's teacher salary barely covered their mortgage. The tension in their household grew thick, like the ice on their driveway, dangerous and ready to crack under pressure. Across town sat Second Chance Haven, a modest animal shelter operating out of a converted warehouse. The shelter's director, Amber Mitchell, had dedicated her life to saving animals after her own troubled childhood. At 32, she wore her blonde hair in a practical ponytail and dressed for functionality rather than fashion. Despite her initial fear of large dogs, the result of a childhood bite, Amber had built a reputation as someone who could rehabilitate even the most traumatized animals. The shelter itself was facing extinction. County budget cuts threatened its closure, and Amber had started sleeping on a cot in her office to save money. The walls needed painting, the heating system groaned with effort, and volunteers were dwindling as everyone in town faced their own financial struggles. In the affluent north side of Oakwood lived Ethan and Madison Wallace. Ethan walked with a prosthetic leg, a souvenir from his military service as a K-9 handler in Afghanistan. Madison, his wife of 5 years, had been his physical therapist. Their spacious home felt empty to them both, missing the patter of children's feet or the click of dog nails on hardwood floors, a silence they had been discussing how to fill. John Thompson stared at the termination letter in disbelief. After 12 years of service at Oakwood Mall Security, the words "position eliminated" seemed surreal against the company letterhead. The mall was downsizing, another casualty of online shopping and economic recession. He crumpled the paper in his fist, knowing what this meant for his already struggling family. That evening, as Sarah calculated bills at the kitchen table, John watched Luna eat from her bowl premium dog food that cost more than he wanted to admit. The German Shepherd's medications for her hip dysplasia had doubled in price last month. Looking at the pile of overdue notices, John made a decision he'd been contemplating for weeks. "We can't afford the dog anymore," he announced flatly, causing Sarah to look up with tired eyes. "Her food, her meds, the vet bills, it's too much." "John, please," Sarah whispered, glancing toward Emily's room upstairs. "Luna is family. Emily would be devastated. And how devastated will she be when we can't pay the mortgage, when we're living in our car?" John's voice rose. "I lost my job today. We're out of options." The argument escalated as Emily descended the stairs, Luna following loyally behind her. The teenager's face hardened as she comprehended her parents' discussion. "You can't get rid of her," Emily shouted, arms protectively encircling Luna's neck. "I'll get a job. I'll pay for everything she needs." "With what money?" "Emily, you're 16. Even if you could work full-time, it wouldn't be enough," John said, his voice softening at his daughter's tears. Sometimes adults have to make hard decisions. For 3 days, tension suffocated the Thompson household. Emily researched cheaper food options and applied for pet assistance programs. She called shelters, only to learn they were all overcrowded, with waiting lists for surrenders. She begged neighbors and friends to temporarily foster Luna, but everyone faced their own financial hardships. "I'll take her to my friend's farm," Emily suggested desperately at breakfast. "She'd be happy there." Sarah exchanged a look with John. They both knew Emily's friend was fictional, a last attempt to save her beloved companion. On Thursday morning, Emily left for school with a tight hug for Luna, whispering promises of finding a solution. By afternoon, John had made his decision. While Sarah worked late at a parent-teacher conference, he loaded Luna into his truck. The German Shepherd's tail wagged trustingly as she settled into the passenger seat, expecting another adventure with her human. John drove to the outskirts of town, 20 miles past the county line where no one would recognize him. Snow began to fall, adding to his guilt as he pulled onto a seldom-used access road. Luna watched him curiously as he stopped the truck. "Come on, girl," he said gruffly. Opening her door, Luna jumped out obediently, circling the truck with excitement. John removed her collar, the one with the Thompson family contact information, and pocketed it. His hands trembled as he commanded her to sit. "Stay," he ordered, backing toward the driver's door. Luna's head tilted in confusion, but she obeyed, as she always had. "Good girl." He climbed into the truck, unable to look at her trusting eyes. As he started the engine, Luna stood, whining softly. John drove away, watching in the rearview mirror as Luna began to follow, then run after the truck. Her confused barks faded as he accelerated, tears streaming down his face. "It's for the best," he told himself as Luna disappeared from view in the thickening snowfall. "Someone will find her. Someone who can afford her." 3 hours later, Richard Coleman, a long-haul trucker from Missouri, spotted something moving along the highway shoulder. Slowing his rig, he was shocked to see a German Shepherd limping through the snow, covered in ice and shivering violently. Richard pulled over, approached slowly, and offered a beef jerky from his lunch. The dog accepted the food cautiously but wouldn't let Richard touch her. After 30 minutes of patient coaxing, he managed to guide the frightened animal into his warm cab. No collar, no identification, just a distinctive scar above her right eye. "Don't worry, girl," Richard said, turning up the heater. "I'll get you somewhere safe." At the next truck stop, Richard called Animal Control. 2 hours later, an officer arrived to transport the German Shepherd to the nearest available shelter, Second Chance Haven in Oakwood. The irony of returning to the very town she'd been abandoned from was lost on everyone but Luna, who stared out the animal control vehicle's window with hollow eyes, watching familiar streets pass by. Amber Mitchell was locking up Second Chance Haven for the night when the county animal control van pulled into the gravel driveway. She sighed, knowing what this meant: another animal needing placement in her already overcrowded shelter. "Sorry to do this to you, Amber," said Officer Wade Jenkins as he stepped out into the cold. "Found this one on Highway 16. No collar, no chip that we could find with our scanner." When Wade opened the van's rear doors, Amber's breath caught. The German Shepherd inside was magnificent despite her condition, or would have been under better circumstances. Now, the dog cowered in the back of the cage, eyes vacant, fur matted with snow and road salt. "She's in rough shape," Amber observed, noting the dog's prominent ribs and the way she favored her right front paw. "Bring her into intake room 2. Inside the small examination room, the German Shepherd refused to move from the corner, her body trembling not just from cold but from fear. Amber had seen this before, the profound psychological trauma of abandonment. "I'll call her Luna for now," Amber decided, the name coming to her as she observed the perfect crescent marking on the dog's chest. "It suits her." For 3 days, Luna refused food. She wouldn't approach the front of her kennel when visitors passed by. She simply stared at the wall, occasionally releasing a sigh so human-like it broke Amber's heart. "She's giving up," Amber told Dr. Robert Jenkins, the elderly veterinarian who volunteered his services twice weekly. "I've seen it before. They just decide life isn't worth fighting for anymore." Dr. Jenkins examined Luna with gentle hands. "Let's try something," he suggested. He pulled a scanner from his bag, newer than the one animal control used, and passed it over Luna's shoulder blades. The device beeped. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Jenkins muttered, reading the display. "She's chipped after all." He scribbled information onto his notepad. "This is a police department registration." Amber's eyebrows shot up. "She's a police dog. Was." Dr. Jenkins corrected. "Township Police K-9 Unit. Registered 5 years ago to Oakwood Police Department." Amber immediately called the police station. After being transferred 3 times, she finally reached Captain Nelson, who'd been with the department for 20 years. "German Shepherd, you say we haven't had K-9s for almost 3 years, budget cuts," Nelson explained. "But that would have been around the time of Officer Thompson's dog." "Thompson," Amber repeated, the name sounding familiar. "John Thompson. His K-9 partner was called Stella Stellar Tracking Abilities. That one. When we had to cut the K-9 program, Thompson adopted her. Couldn't bear to be separated," Nelson continued. "Broke his heart when he had to retire from active duty, 2 injury in the line. Last I heard, he was working security somewhere." Amber thanked him and hung up, staring at Luna with newfound understanding. This wasn't just any abandoned dog. This was a decorated police K-9 with a history of service. The next morning, Amber entered the shelter to find Kelly Santos, their young social media manager, already taking photos of the newest arrivals. "Kelly, I need you to do something special with Luna," Amber said, explaining the German Shepherd's police background. "We need to highlight her service. This could get her the attention she deserves." By afternoon, Kelly had posted Luna's story, or what they knew of it, on the shelter's Facebook page. "Former police hero abandoned. This German Shepherd once protected our community. Now she's been discarded like trash. Can you help?" The post spread rapidly through Oakwood's tight-knit community. By evening, it had been shared over 2,000 times. Local news picked up the story, and a reporter arrived to film Luna, still refusing to eat, still staring at the wall of her kennel. "This is beyond neglect," Amber told the camera firmly. "This is betrayal of an animal who served this town. Someone knows who did this." As Luna's story aired on the evening news, Emily Thompson dropped her glass of water, watching in horror as the camera panned across the German Shepherd's distinctive face. She recognized the scar above Luna's right eye, a small injury from when Luna had caught her paw on a fence chasing squirrels last summer. "Mom!" Emily screamed, pointing at the television. "That's Luna. That's our Luna." Sarah entered the living room, face paling as she recognized their dog. "That's impossible. Your father said he found a nice family for her." Her voice trailed off as understanding dawned across town at Flanagan's bar. John Thompson stared at the same news broadcast on the mounted TV, his whiskey glass frozen halfway to his lips. Meanwhile, Ethan Wallace watched the news story from his living room. Madison curled against him on the couch. The former K-9 handler straightened when he heard Luna's background. "That dog needs someone who understands her," he murmured, his hand unconsciously dropping to rub his prosthetic leg. "She's not just any abandoned pet." Madison studied her husband's face, recognizing the familiar longing. "You're thinking about adoption. I'm thinking we should at least meet her," Ethan replied carefully. "Dogs like that with training, with purpose, they deteriorate faster in shelters. They need work, structure." The next morning, Second Chance Haven opened to find a line of people waiting. Some brought donations, dog food, blankets, cash. Others came hoping to meet the former police dog they'd seen on the news. Among them stood Ethan Wallace, leaning slightly on his cane, patience etched into his weathered face. Amber led him to Luna's kennel. Unlike the other visitors who'd approached with excitement, Ethan stood quietly, assessing the German Shepherd with trained eyes. Luna, who had ignored everyone else, raised her head slightly, nostrils flaring as she caught his scent. "She recognizes something in you," Amber observed. Ethan nodded. Military dog handlers and police K-9 units train similarly. She probably smells the connection. He knelt, despite the difficulty with his prosthetic, and extended his hand, palm down just outside the kennel bars. "We speak the same language, don't we, girl?" For the first time since her arrival, Luna approached the front of her kennel, nose cautiously extending to sniff Ethan's hand. Amber watched in amazement as Luna cautiously approached Ethan's outstretched hand. The German Shepherd's nose twitched, taking in his scent with deliberate care. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed her muzzle against his fingers through the kennel bars. "Well, I'll be," Amber whispered. "That's the first positive response she's shown to anyone." Ethan remained still, his weathered face softening as Luna maintained contact. "She's been through hell," he observed quietly. "But she remembers what it means to trust a handler, that training never completely leaves them." "Would you like to take her to the meet and greet room?" Amber offered, trying to contain her excitement at this breakthrough. Ethan nodded, rising slowly to accommodate his prosthetic leg. When Amber opened Luna's kennel, the dog initially retreated to her corner, but Ethan simply waited, not forcing interaction. "It's all right, soldier," he said in a calm, steady voice. "At your pace." The use of the military terminology seemed to resonate with Luna. Her ears perked forward slightly, and after a full minute of consideration, she approached Ethan again, this time allowing him to clip a leash to her shelter collar. In the meet and greet room, a small space with a worn sofa and chew toys scattered across the floor, Luna remained vigilant but showed subtle signs of relaxation. She accepted water from a bowl Amber provided and even sniffed at a treat Ethan offered, though she didn't take it. "She's severely depressed," Ethan noted. Classic signs of abandonment trauma compounded by her training background. Service dogs form deeper bonds than typical pets. When that bond is broken, he trailed off, his hand unconsciously rubbing his prosthetic leg. "You understand that personally," Amber observed gently. Ethan nodded. "My partner in Afghanistan, a Belgian Malinois named Rex, he saved my life when our unit hit an IED. Lost my leg, but would have lost more if not for him." He swallowed hard. "Rex didn't make it. Taking shrapnel meant for me." Luna had been listening intently, her head tilted as if understanding the gravity of Ethan's words. She moved closer to him, not making contact but decreasing the space between them. "I think she understands more than we realize," Amber said, watching the interaction with growing hope. "Would you consider fostering her? We don't normally approve same-day fosters, but given your background and her specific needs—" "I need to discuss it with my wife," Ethan replied, though his eyes never left Luna. "Madison would be supportive, but a decision like this affects our whole household." "Of course," Amber agreed. "She'll be here when you're ready." As Ethan reluctantly prepared to leave, Luna followed him to the meet-and-greet room door, stopping just short of crossing the threshold back to the kennel area. It was a small gesture, but Amber recognized its significance. Luna had made her first connection. Emily Thompson couldn't concentrate on her biology test. Luna's face on the evening news haunted her, the hollow eyes, the prominent ribs visible even through her German Shepherd coat. Her father's betrayal cut deeper than she could process. He hadn't found Luna a new home as he'd claimed. He'd abandoned her to die in the winter cold. When the final bell rang, Emily bypassed her usual school bus and walked determinedly toward downtown Oakwood. The 3-mile journey in freezing temperatures didn't deter her. Second chance. Haven closed at 6. She had time. The shelter was busier than usual when Emily arrived. The parking lot filled with cars of people bringing donations after seeing Luna's story. Emily joined the line of visitors, pulling her wool hat lower to avoid being recognized. She'd volunteered at other animal shelters often enough to know the protocols. If they discovered she was the daughter of the family who had abandoned Luna, they might not let her see the dog. When her turn came, Emily approached the front desk where Kelly Santos was processing visitors. "I'm here to see the German Shepherd," Emily said, attempting to keep her voice steady. "The one from the news." Kelly assessed the teenager before her. "Luna's had a rough day with all the visitors. She's pretty overwhelmed. Are you looking to adopt?" "No. I just—" Emily faltered, searching for a plausible excuse. "I had a German Shepherd growing up. When I saw her story, I thought maybe I could help somehow." Something in Emily's desperate expression must have touched Kelly, because she nodded. 10 minutes. "Okay, she's in kennel 14. Don't try to touch her. She's still very fearful." Emily thanked her and walked slowly toward the kennels. Heart pounding. The noise and smell were overwhelming, dozens of dogs barking, the sharp tang of disinfectant fighting against the underlying scent of animals in confinement. She found Luna's kennel easily. It was the quiet one. Unlike the other dogs who approached their kennel doors hopefully or barked for attention, Luna lay curled in the back corner, facing the wall. "Luna," Emily whispered, crouching by the kennel door. "It's me." The German Shepherd's ears twitched at the familiar voice. Slowly, Luna turned her head, eyes focusing on Emily's face. For a moment, neither moved. Then Luna rose stiffly, approaching the kennel door with cautious hope. Emily pressed her fingers against the chain link, tears streaming down her face as Luna sniffed them, tail giving the barest hint of movement. "I'm so sorry," Emily whispered. I didn't know what he did." Luna whined softly, pressing her nose against Emily's fingers in a gesture of recognition that unleashed the teenager's carefully controlled emotions. Emily sobbed quietly, whispering promises and apologies through the kennel bars. "Is everything okay over there?" Kelly called. Hearing Emily's crying, Emily quickly wiped her tears, standing up straight. "Yes, sorry. It's sad to see her like this." Kelly nodded sympathetically. She had a visitor earlier today who seemed to connect with her, a former military dog handler. first positive response she's shown since arriving. Emily felt a confusing mixture of emotions, relief that Luna might have found someone who understood her, jealousy that it wasn't her family, and renewed anger at her father's betrayal. "That's good," she managed to say. "She deserves someone special." After reluctantly saying goodbye to Luna, Emily stopped at the front desk again. "Is there any way I could volunteer here after school or weekends?" Kelly brightened. "We always need help. Here's an application form. You'll need a parent's signature since you're under 18. Emily took the form, knowing she'd have to forge her mother's signature. Her parents could never know she'd found Luna, not until she figured out what to do next. Sarah Thompson stirred the soup simmering on the stove, her movements mechanical. The house felt empty without Luna's nails clicking on the hardwood floors or her heavy sigh as she settled by the fireplace. Emily barely spoke to either parent, retreating to her room immediately after dinner each night. John spent most evenings at Flanagan's bar, coming home with whiskey on his breath and guilt in his eyes. When John stumbled in that evening, Sarah couldn't contain her anger any longer. "I saw Luna on the news," she said quietly, turning down the burner. "You said you found her a home." John froze in the doorway, his face ashen. "Sarah, You abandoned her," Sarah continued, her voice trembling. "Left her to die in the snow. How could you?" John sank into a kitchen chair, head in his hands. "I tried to find her a home. Nobody wanted an aging German shepherd with medical issues. The shelters were full." "So you just dumped her on the side of the road like garbage?" Sarah's voice rose. "That dog loved you, John. She was loyal to you when nobody else was after the injury, after you lost your position on the force." "I was trying to save this family," John shouted, standing so abruptly his chair clattered to the floor. "Do you think I wanted to do it? Do you think it didn't kill me inside?" "Keep your voice down," Sarah hissed. "Emily will hear you." "Too late," came Emily's voice from the doorway. She stood with arms crossed, face hard with anger beyond her 16 years. "I already know everything. I saw Luna today at the shelter. She recognized me." The color drained from John's face. "You went to the shelter, Emily. You can't..." "Can't what? Dad can't see what you did. Can't face the truth about who you really are." Emily's voice cracked. "Luna trusted you. I trusted you." "Emily, please." John reached for his daughter, but she backed away. "Don't touch me so," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Luna is famous now. Did you know that everyone in town is talking about the heartless monster who abandoned a former police dog? That's you, Dad. That's who you are now." Emily fled upstairs, the slam of her bedroom door punctuating her exit. Sarah and John stood in pained silence until John spoke, his voice barely audible. "I'll fix this," he promised. "Somehow I'll make this right." Amber Mitchell rubbed her tired eyes as she reviewed Second Chance Haven's financial statements. Despite the surge in donations following Luna's story, they remained dangerously close to closure. The county had reduced their funding by 60%, and the building's heating system needed costly repairs before winter deepened. A soft whine drew her attention to Luna's kennel across from her office. Unlike the other dogs who slept at night, Luna often remained alert, watching Amber work through the night. Sometimes Amber brought the German shepherd into her office, letting her rest on the old plaid dog bed beside her desk. Tonight seemed like one of those nights. "Come on, girl," Amber said, opening Luna's kennel. "Keep me company while I crunch these depressing numbers." Luna followed Amber into the small office, circling the dog bed 3 times before settling down with a heavy sigh. Amber returned to her spreadsheets, occasionally glancing at the German shepherd whose eyes remained fixed on her, as if studying her movements. "You know, Amber said conversationally. "Before you came here, I was thinking about closing this place. 12 years of saving animals. And what do I have to show for it? An empty bank account, a failing building, and no personal life to speak of." Luna's ears perked up, head tilting as if truly listening. "But seeing you today with that veteran Ethan, it reminded me why I do this. Those moments when an animal connects with a human who truly understands them." Amber smiled. "That's worth all the sleepless nights and ramen noodle dinners." As if understanding. Luna rose from her bed and approached Amber, resting her head gently on the woman's knee, the first voluntary contact she'd initiated with anyone except Ethan. Amber froze, afraid any movement might spook the dog. Slowly, she lowered her hand to stroke Luna's head. The German Shepherd allowed the touch, her eyes closing briefly in what appeared to be contentment. "Well, look at you," Amber whispered, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "Maybe there's hope for both of us after all." The next morning, Ethan and Madison Wallace arrived at Second Chance Haven shortly after opening. Madison's expert gaze took in the shelter's condition: the leaking roof, the outdated heating system, the worn furniture. As a physical therapist, she was accustomed to assessing environments for their impact on recovery. "This place needs help almost as much as the animals do," she observed quietly to her husband. Ethan nodded. "Amber's doing the best she can with limited resources." When Amber spotted them, her tired face brightened. "You came back," she said, hope evident in her voice. "We did," Ethan confirmed. "Madison wanted to meet Luna before we made any decisions." "Of course," Amber said, leading them toward the kennels. "She had a breakthrough last night, actually initiated contact with me. First time she's done that with anyone except you." Luna was awake in her kennel, sitting alert rather than cowering in the corner. When she saw Ethan, her tail gave a slight wag, another milestone in her emotional recovery. "She remembers you," Madison observed with a smile. "That's remarkable after just one meeting." Ethan knelt by the kennel, addressing Luna directly. "Hey there, soldier. Brought someone special to meet you today." Madison followed her husband's lead, kneeling despite her designer jeans and offering her hand for Luna to sniff. The German Shepherd approached cautiously, her nose working to catalog this new human's scent. "She's beautiful," Madison said softly. "Those eyes so intelligent. She's evaluating me." "That's her training," Ethan explained. "Assessing potential threats, categorizing new people." After a thorough inspection, Luna seemed to approve of Madison, allowing her to stroke her head through the kennel bars. "We'd like to apply for adoption," Madison announced, looking up at Amber. "We've discussed it extensively, and we both feel we can provide the specialized care Luna needs." Amber's professional demeanor couldn't quite mask her delight. "That's wonderful news. There's an application process, of course, and a home check." "We understand," Ethan assured her. "We want to do this right. Luna deserves a proper transition after everything she's been through." As they discussed adoption procedures, none of them noticed Emily Thompson watching from the shelter entrance, a volunteer application clutched in her hand and conflicting emotions written across her young face. The news about Second Chance Haven's imminent closure spread through Oakwood within days. County officials had delivered their final notice. The shelter had 30 days to vacate the premises unless they could bring the aging building up to code. The estimated repairs totaled over $50,000, an impossible sum for the struggling nonprofit. Amber sat at her desk, surrounded by engineering reports and violation notices, her usual determination faltering under the weight of reality. Luna lay beside her, the German Shepherd's presence a small comfort amid the mounting crisis. "I don't know what to do, girl," Amber confessed, scratching behind Luna's ears. Even if we found homes for all the current animals, where would the next ones go? The next town over already closed their shelter last year. A knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. Kelly stood in the doorway, excitement radiating from her young face. "Amber, you need to see this." She thrust her phone forward, displaying their social media page. Luna's story has gone viral. That video of her with Ethan yesterday has over 50,000 shares. People from as far as California are donating to her medical fund. Amber scanned the figures in disbelief. This is amazing for Luna, but it's specifically for her care. We can't legally use it for the building repairs. True, Kelly acknowledged, but it's bringing attention to our shelter. 3 news stations called this morning requesting interviews about Luna and Second Chance Haven. Hope flickered in Amber's chest. Schedule them all. Maybe we can turn Luna's story into a larger conversation about the shelter's situation. By afternoon, camera crews descended upon Second Chance Haven. Reporters interviewed Amber about Luna's abandonment and remarkable recovery, skillfully guiding the conversation toward the shelter's precarious future. "What happens to Luna if the shelter closes?" asked Diana Reynolds, a well-coiffed reporter from the regional news network. "Luna is fortunate she has a potential adopter, a former military canine handler who understands her special needs," Amber explained. "But we have 27 other animals who haven't been so lucky. If we close, there's nowhere for them to go." The camera panned to the row of kennels where hopeful faces peered out, then back to Luna, who sat regally beside Amber. Her behavior transformed from the cowering, traumatized animal who had arrived weeks earlier. "And what would it take to keep Second Chance Haven open?" Diana prompted. $50,000 for essential repairs," Amber answered, her voice steady despite her discomfort with asking for help. "Plus ongoing operational support. We've been serving this community for 12 years, taking in animals that other shelters won't accept: seniors, those with medical issues, abuse cases. If we close, those animals lose their last chance." As the interviews concluded, Ethan and Madison Wallace arrived for their scheduled visit with Luna. They had been coming daily, gradually building trust with the German Shepherd as part of their pre-adoption process. Today they brought something new, a service dog vest, neatly folded in Madison's hands. "We thought it might help her reconnect with her training," Ethan explained to Amber. "Service dogs often find comfort in having a job to do." Amber nodded. "That's a wonderful idea. Her background as a police canine is deeply ingrained in her identity." In the meet and greet room, Ethan knelt beside Luna, showing her the vest before attempting to put it on her. Luna sniffed it thoroughly, tail wagging with more enthusiasm than they'd yet seen. "She recognizes what it means," Madison observed. "Look at her body language. She's standing taller already." Carefully, Ethan slipped the vest over Luna's head and secured the straps around her torso. The transformation was immediate and profound. Luna's posture straightened, her eyes alert and focused, awaiting instruction with newfound purpose. "Sit," Ethan commanded gently. Luna complied instantly, her movements crisp and precise, a professional rather than a pet. "Stay!" Ethan walked across the room. Luna remained perfectly still, watching him intently. "Come." The German Shepherd moved with grace that belied her recent physical condition, positioning herself exactly at Ethan's left side. "Remarkable," Amber whispered from the doorway where she'd been watching. "It's like seeing a different dog." Madison wiped away a tear. She needed to remember who she is, not just a discarded pet, but a working dog with purpose and value. Their session was interrupted by frantic shouting from the shelter's main area. Amber rushed out to find Kelly pointing at a rapidly spreading pool of water emerging from beneath the utility room door. "The main pipe burst. Kelly cried. "Water's everywhere. Call the emergency plumber," Amber directed, already moving toward the utility room. The door wouldn't budge, the pressure of water behind it too great. "We need to shut off the main water valve." "It's in there." Kelly pointed to the flooded room. Ethan joined them, assessing the situation quickly. "We need to break down the door. The water damage is going to get worse every minute." As he spoke, the lights flickered ominously, water reaching the electrical system. A loud pop from inside the utility room was followed by sparks visible through the crack beneath the door. "Everyone out," Amber shouted, already moving toward the kennels. "Fire risk. Start evacuating the animals." The shelter erupted into organized chaos as volunteers and staff rushed to lead dogs out on leashes and carry cats in carriers. Luna, still wearing her service vest, stayed alertly by Ethan's side as he helped guide frightened animals toward the exits. The acrid smell of electrical fire filled the air as smoke began seeping from the utility room vents. Madison called 911 while helping Amber move crates of small animals to safety. When the fire alarm triggered, the remaining dogs began howling in panic. Amber did a quick count of the evacuated animals, her heart sinking. "The isolation kennels," she gasped. "We forgot the new intakes in the back room." Before anyone could respond, Luna's demeanor changed dramatically. She pulled away from Ethan, barking urgently and moving toward the smoke-filled corridor leading to the isolation area. "Luna, no," Ethan called, but the German Shepherd had already disappeared into the thickening smoke. Amber moved to follow, but Ethan held her back. "The fire department will be here in minutes. It's too dangerous. Those puppies will die of smoke inhalation before then," Amber argued, pulling free from his grasp. Inside, Luna navigated the smoke-filled corridor with determination, her police training evident in every movement. She reached the isolation room where 3 puppies cowered in a large kennel, whimpering in fear. The smoke was thickest here, pouring through the ventilation system directly from the adjacent utility room where flames were now visible through the small window. Luna barked sharply at the puppies, circling their kennel. The latch had a simple lift mechanism that the German Shepherd had observed humans using countless times. Rising on her hind legs, Luna maneuvered the latch with her nose until it clicked open. The puppies huddled in the back of the cage, too terrified to move despite the open door. Luna entered the kennel, gently nudging them with her nose, herding them toward the exit. Outside, fire trucks arrived with sirens blaring. Ethan paced anxiously, watching the building entrance for any sign of Luna or Amber. When Amber stumbled out, coughing violently, Madison rushed to support her. "Luna's still in there," Amber choked out. She ran toward the isolation room. Ethan moved toward the building, but firefighters blocked his path. "Sir, you can't go in there." "My dog is inside," Ethan argued, the desperation in his voice revealing how deeply he'd already bonded with Luna. Just as firefighters prepared to enter, Luna emerged from the smoke, 3 small puppies stumbling along beside her. Her service vest was singed, her fur gray with ash, but her posture remained dignified as she guided her charges to safety. The gathered crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Amber dropped to her knees in disbelief as Luna delivered the puppies directly to her before collapsing from exhaustion. "She saved them," Amber whispered, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her face. "She knew exactly what to do." Paramedics rushed to check both humans and animals for smoke inhalation as they placed an oxygen mask over Luna's muzzle. News cameras captured the entire scene. The heroic German Shepherd, once abandoned and broken, now a savior. Diana Reynolds, who had returned with her camera crew after hearing about the fire on the police scanner, approached Amber for an immediate interview. "The dog that everyone in town has been talking about just saved 3 puppies from a burning building," Diana said into her microphone. "Amber, can you tell us what happened?" Still wrapped in a shock blanket, Amber recounted Luna's heroic actions, her voice breaking with emotion. She remembered her training. When everyone else hesitated, Luna knew exactly what to do. She's not just a former police dog, she's a hero. Twice over now. The camera panned to Luna receiving oxygen treatment, Ethan kneeling protectively beside her as Madison spoke with paramedics about her condition. "And what happens now?" Diana asked. "With the shelter damaged, where will these animals go?" Amber looked around at the gathering crowd of Oakwood residents who had come to help after seeing the smoke or hearing sirens. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "The building was already in trouble before this. Now—" She trailed off, the reality of their situation sinking in. An unexpected voice spoke up from behind the news crew. "They'll stay with us." Amber turned to see Margaret Wilson, owner of Oakwood's largest veterinary practice, stepping forward. "My clinic has empty kennels in our boarding facility," Margaret continued. "We can house them temporarily until the shelter situation is resolved." Others from the community began offering assistance transportation for the animals, temporary fostering, supplies, and donations, and Diana Reynolds captured it all for her broadcast, skillfully weaving the story of Luna's heroism with the shelter's desperate need. By nightfall, all Second Chance Haven animals had been relocated to safe housing. Luna, diagnosed with mild smoke inhalation but otherwise unharmed, rested in a private room at Margaret Wilson's veterinary clinic. Ethan and Madison refused to leave her side, taking turns keeping vigil through the night. "She was magnificent," Madison whispered, gently stroking Luna's sleeping form. "The way she took charge, saved those puppies." Ethan nodded, his expression solemn. "That's who she's always been, a protector. Someone threw away a hero. Madison." "Their loss," Madison said firmly. "Our gain." Outside the clinic, the story of Luna's heroism spread rapidly through social media and news outlets. By morning, the footage of the ash-covered German Shepherd leading puppies to safety had gone national, capturing hearts across the country. Second Chance. Haven's donation page crashed repeatedly as thousands of people attempted to contribute simultaneously. Meanwhile, in the Thompson household, the family watched the news coverage in stunned silence, the gravity of John's actions now magnified by Luna's widely celebrated heroism. Emily glared at her father through tears, while Sarah simply walked out of the room, unable to look at her husband. John sat alone, watching Luna's story replay on every channel, the weight of his shame growing heavier with each passing moment. The dog he had discarded like garbage had become a national hero. The dog he had failed had remained true to her training to protect and serve, no matter the cost. The aftermath of Luna's heroic rescue left her physically drained. By the second morning at Margaret Wilson's veterinary clinic, the German Shepherd's breathing had become labored, each inhalation an obvious struggle. "Doctor." Wilson frowned as she listened to Luna's chest with her stethoscope, the raspy sounds confirming her concerns. "The smoke inhalation was worse than we initially thought," she explained to Ethan and Madison, who had barely left Luna's side. "She's developing pneumonia. We need to start aggressive treatment immediately." Madison gripped Ethan's hand tightly. "Will she be okay?" "Doctor." Wilson's expression remained carefully neutral. "Luna is still weak from her earlier ordeal. The abandonment, malnutrition, and stress have compromised her immune system. Add to that her age and the pre-existing hip dysplasia." She paused. "We'll do everything we can, but I want you to be prepared. This will be expensive and there are no guarantees." "Cost isn't an issue," Ethan stated firmly. Whatever she needs. Dr. Wilson nodded. We'll start with IV antibiotics, oxygen therapy, and bronchodilators. She'll need round-the-clock monitoring for at least the next 72 hours. As Dr. Wilson left to prepare the treatment plan, Madison gently stroked Luna's head. The German shepherd's eyes, usually so alert and intelligent, were dull with fever and fatigue. "Hang in there, brave girl," Madison whispered. "You've got so much to live for now." Ethan stood by the window, his jaw tight with emotion. "I should have stopped her from going into that building." "You couldn't have," Madison reassured him. "That's who she is, who she was trained to be. Would you have stayed outside if someone needed help?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood. Luna's actions reflected the same instincts that had driven Ethan during his military service, the unwavering commitment to protect others regardless of personal risk. By evening, Luna's condition had deteriorated further. Her breathing became more labored, her temperature climbing despite the antipyretics. Dr. Wilson added a cooling blanket and increased the oxygen flow, her movements betraying the urgency of the situation. "We may need to intubate if her oxygen levels drop any further," she warned. "I've consulted with a veterinary pulmonologist in Harrisburg who suggested a more aggressive antibiotic combination. The new medication regimen came with a staggering cost, nearly $8,000 for the specialized antibiotics alone." Ethan signed the authorization without hesitation, though Madison noticed his hand trembling slightly as he did. "We just bought the house," she said quietly when they were alone. "The renovation budget doesn't matter," Ethan interrupted. "We'll figure it out." News of Luna's deteriorating health spread quickly through Oakwood. Amber posted updates on the Second Chance Haven social media accounts, where Luna had become something of a celebrity following her rescue of the puppies. Donations for her care poured in, but the shelter's protocol required such funds to remain in their general medical account rather than being allocated to a specific animal, particularly one in the process of adoption. Emily Thompson learned about Luna's condition during her after-school volunteer shift at Margaret Wilson's clinic. Though she hadn't revealed her connection to Luna, Emily had convinced her mother to sign the permission form, claiming the volunteer hours would strengthen her college applications. In reality, it was the closest she could get to Luna without raising suspicions. That afternoon, Emily was assigned to clean cages in the recovery ward, just down the hall from the intensive care unit where Luna fought for her life. Through the observation window, she could see the German Shepherd connected to monitors and IV lines, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Emily had ever seen her. "She's not doing well, is she?" Emily asked one of the technicians who emerged from Luna's room. The young woman glanced at Emily with sympathy. "It's touch and go. The Wallaces are with Dr. Wilson now, discussing options." Emily continued her tasks mechanically, ears straining to catch snippets of the conversation happening in Dr. Wilson's office across the hall. The door was partially open, and voices occasionally carried into the corridor. Last resort option would be a ventilator, Dr. Wilson was saying. But that would mean transferring her to the University Veterinary Hospital in Pittsburgh. "Whatever it takes," came Ethan's resolute voice. "The transport alone could be risky in her condition, Dr. Wilson cautioned. And the specialized care there would run upwards of $20,000. There was a pause before Madison spoke. "We've already discussed it. We'll find a way to cover it." Emily felt sick with guilt. Luna was fighting for her life because of her father's actions, because their family had thrown her away like garbage. Now the Wallaces were prepared to spend their savings, possibly go into debt, to save her. The teenager finished her shift in a daze, walking home through Oakwood's quiet streets with tears streaming down her face. When she reached her house, she found her father's truck in the driveway for the first time in days. John had been sleeping on his friend's couch since the night of their confrontation, returning only to collect clothes when he knew Emily would be at school. Inside, she found him sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at an old photograph. Emily recognized it immediately, John in his police uniform with a younger Luna beside him, both looking proud and dignified at some department ceremony. "She's dying," Emily announced from the doorway, her voice cold. "Luna has pneumonia from the smoke. She saved 3 puppies from the fire at the shelter, and now she's dying because of it." John's head snapped up, his face haggard with fatigue and guilt. "What?" "They're talking about putting her on a ventilator," Emily continued, a strange calm settling over her despite the storm of emotions inside. "The Wallaces, the people who want to adopt her, they're going to spend their life savings trying to save her." John stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Where is she? Which hospital? Why do you care?" Emily demanded, her voice rising. "You left her to die once already. What difference does it make if she dies now instead?" The harsh words landed like physical blows. John flinched, his shoulders slumping. "Emily, please. The Wallaces are good people," Emily interrupted. "They're going to give Luna everything we couldn't or wouldn't, but they shouldn't have to bankrupt themselves because of what you did." John reached for his truck keys on the counter. "Tell me where she is. So you can what? Make yourself feel better. It's too late for that." "I need to make this right," John insisted, his voice breaking. "Please, Emily." Something in her father's desperation reached through Emily's anger. "Dr. Wilson's clinic on Maple Street. But don't you dare upset her or the Wallaces. Luna deserves peace. Whatever happens." John nodded once and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, Emily called after him, "Dad, what was she to you before she was our pet?" John turned back, his eyes hollow with grief. "Everything. She was everything." John Thompson sat in his truck outside Dr. Wilson's veterinary clinic for nearly 30 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to muster the courage to go inside. Through the large front windows, he could see the reception area bustling with activity staff moving purposefully, clients waiting with their pets, a community functioning normally while his world had collapsed around him. Finally, drawing a deep breath, John stepped out into the cold evening air. The clinic's warm lighting spilled onto the sidewalk as he approached the entrance, his footsteps heavy with dread. At the reception desk, a young woman looked up with a professional smile. "How can I help you, sir?" John cleared his throat. "I'm here about the German Shepherd, Luna." The receptionist's smile faded slightly. "Are you with the Wallaces?" "No, I'm—" John hesitated, suddenly aware he had no legitimate reason to be there. "I'm from Second Chance Haven. I heard she wasn't doing well." It wasn't entirely a lie. Before his injury, John had occasionally volunteered at the shelter, helping train difficult dogs with his police K-9 expertise. "She's in critical condition," the receptionist said, her voice lowered. "Only family and approved visitors right now. If you want to leave a message for the Wallaces or Ms. Mitchell, I can pass it along." John was about to respond when a door opened and Ethan Wallace emerged from the treatment area. Despite never having met the man, John recognized him immediately from the news coverage, tall with military bearing, his prosthetic leg visible beneath his shorts. Ethan looked exhausted, his face drawn with worry. Their eyes met across the lobby, and something like recognition flickered in Ethan's expression. Before John could retreat, Ethan approached him. "You're John Thompson," Ethan said quietly. It wasn't a question. John's mouth went dry. "How did you—" "Your daughter has been volunteering here," Ethan explained. "She doesn't think anyone's noticed how she reacts when Luna's mentioned, but Madison is a therapist. She picks up on these things." His gaze hardened. "What are you doing here? I heard Luna was in trouble." John managed. "I came to—" He trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. To help. To apologize. What could he possibly offer now? Ethan studied him for a long moment. "Come with me," he finally said, turning toward a small consultation room off the main lobby. Once inside with the door closed, Ethan faced John squarely. "Your daughter doesn't know I know who she is. I haven't said anything because it seemed important to her to keep it quiet. But I think it's time for some honesty. Don't you—" John nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. "Luna is fighting for her life in there," Ethan continued, his voice level but intense. "The doctors are talking about transferring her to Pittsburgh for specialized treatment. Before I take you back to see her, if that's what you want, I need to understand one thing. Why did you abandon her?" The question hung in the air between them, simple yet devastating in its directness. John sank into one of the chairs, suddenly feeling every one of his 45 years. "It's not a simple answer he began. "I've got time," Ethan replied, remaining standing. John ran a hand over his face. "Luna wasn't just our family pet. She was my partner on the police force. The department's K-9 program got cut 5 years ago, budget issues. They were going to send the dogs to other departments, but Luna and I—" He paused, swallowing hard. "We'd been through too much together. I couldn't let her go." "So you adopted her," Ethan supplied. John nodded. "The department allowed it since I was still on the force. But then came the shooting at the First National Bank. Luna and I were first on scene." His voice faltered. "She took a bullet meant for me. Saved my life but nearly lost hers. The department covered her emergency surgery. But after that, she was classified as retired, and the medical expenses fell to me." Understanding dawned on Ethan's face. "The hip dysplasia, consequence of the shooting," John confirmed. "The bullet damaged her hip joint. She needed special medication, physical therapy, expensive food. The department gave me a medical retirement too, PTSD and a shoulder injury from the same incident. Our income was cut in half overnight. And then you lost your security job," Ethan guessed, finally taking a seat across from John. "Everything fell apart at once." John's voice cracked. "I tried to find her another home. Called everyone I knew in law enforcement. Contacted K-9 retirement organizations. No one wants an aging, injured police dog with ongoing medical needs." "So you left her on the side of the road," Ethan said, his tone flat. John flinched at the stark description of his actions. "I convinced myself someone would find her quickly, that she'd be better off with anyone else than watching our family lose everything." He looked up, meeting Ethan's gaze directly. "I was wrong. It was unforgivable. I've replayed that moment every day since, seeing her confusion as I drove away." Silence settled between them, heavy with judgment and regret. "I was a K-9 handler too," Ethan finally said. "In Afghanistan, my dog, Rex, gave his life protecting our unit from an IED. He tapped his prosthetic leg. He's the reason I only lost my leg instead of my life." John nodded, understanding the unspoken bond between handlers and their K-9 partners. "If you had asked for help, reached out to the community, to other handlers," Ethan began. "Pride, John interrupted. Stupid, destructive pride. I couldn't admit I'd failed as a cop, as a provider, as Luna's handler. By the time I abandoned her, I was drinking too much, pushing everyone away. He looked down at his hands. I told myself I was protecting my family from the financial burden, but really, I was protecting myself from having to face what my life had become. Ethan considered this, his expression unreadable. Luna recognized your daughter immediately at the shelter. Did you know that? A fresh wave of pain washed over John's face. Emily told me. She's never going to forgive me for this. Neither is my wife. And Luna, Ethan asked, if she survives this, what do you want for her? To be with people who deserve her? John answered without hesitation. You and your wife, I've seen the news stories. You understand her in ways most people couldn't. Ethan stood. Decision made. Come with me. There's something you need to see. They walked through the treatment area to the ICU, where Madison sat beside Luna's kennel, speaking softly to the sedated German shepherd. She looked up as they entered, surprise registering at the sight of John. Madison, this is John Thompson, Ethan said quietly, Luna's former handler. Understanding dawned in Madison's eyes. She stood, studying John with the careful assessment of a therapist accustomed to reading people. She's holding her own, Madison told him, stepping aside so John could approach the kennel. The antibiotics seem to be helping, but her breathing is still compromised. John moved forward slowly, as if approaching a shrine. Luna lay on her side, an IV in her foreleg, an oxygen cannula fitted to her muzzle. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking her vital signs, even unconscious. Her ears twitched at the sound of John's voice. Hey, partner, he whispered, kneeling beside the kennel. It's me. Luna's eyes remained closed, but her tail gave the faintest thump against the kennel floor. She knows your voice, Madison observed softly. John reached through the kennel bars, gently touching Luna's paw. I'm sorry, girl. I'm so sorry. Ethan placed a hand on John's shoulder. Dr. Wilson is arranging transport to Pittsburgh for specialized treatment. The prognosis is guarded. But there's hope. John nodded, unable to speak. After a moment, he stood and faced the Wallaces. How much is this costing you? Ethan and Madison exchanged glances. That's not your concern, Madison said gently. It is, John insisted. This is my responsibility. The damage to her lungs wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been abandoned, weakened from exposure and malnutrition. We've been approved for a care credit account, Ethan explained reluctantly. And we have some savings. We'll make it work. John shook his head. I still have my pension from the force. It's not much, but something. And he hesitated, then committed. I have her service medal, solid silver, awarded after the bank shooting. It's valuable. John, we can't take your... Madison began. Please, John interrupted. Let me do this one thing right. Before they could respond, the treatment room door opened, and Emily Thompson stood frozen in the doorway, her volunteer smock still on, eyes wide with shock at the sight of her father kneeling beside Luna's kennel. Dad, she whispered. What are you doing here? John stood slowly. Emily, you have no right to be here, she said, her voice rising as she moved protectively toward Luna. Haven't you done enough? Emily, Madison intervened gently. Your father was just explaining something important about Luna's history. She glanced at John. Something I think you should hear too. Emily's gaze darted between the adults, confusion warring with anger. What are you talking about? John took a deep breath. Luna wasn't just our pet. Emily, before she came to live with us, she was my partner on the police force. Emily's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. What? No, that's not possible. You never said, I know, John acknowledged. I should have told you and your mother the truth years ago. Over the next 20 minutes, John recounted the full story: his partnership with Luna, the bank shooting that had injured them both, their joint retirement, and the financial spiral that had led to his desperate decision. As he spoke, Emily's rigid posture gradually softened, her anger giving way to confusion, then a tentative understanding. That's why she always positioned herself between us and strangers, Emily realized. Why she inspected the house every night before bed. She was still on duty. John nodded, tears welling in his eyes. Always a cop, even in retirement. Emily approached Luna's kennel, gently stroking the sleeping dog's head. All this time, I thought she was just our pet that you didn't want anymore. But she was your partner. She looked up at her father, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. You survived a shooting together. She saved my life, John confirmed, and I repaid that debt by abandoning her when things got tough. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of Luna's monitors. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice small. What happens now? It was Dr. Wilson who answered, entering the room with a folder of documents. That depends on all of you, she said, having overheard enough to understand the complicated situation. Luna needs specialized care that we can't provide here. The transport team from Pittsburgh will arrive in the morning. And the cost? John asked directly. Dr. Wilson didn't sugarcoat it. The full treatment course, including ventilator support if needed, transportation, and follow-up care, will be approximately $25,000. Emily gasped. Ethan and Madison exchanged worried glances. I'll cover it, John said firmly. Whatever it takes. Dad, we don't have that kind of money, Emily protested. I'll sell the truck, John replied, and I've been offered my old security position back with a raise, since they haven't been able to fill the role. Between that, my pension, and Luna's medal. He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. I'll figure it out. I owe her that much. Dr. Wilson nodded. I'll need a financial guarantee before the transport team arrives. As she left to prepare the paperwork, an uneasy alliance formed in the small treatment room. The Wallaces, John, and Emily, united in their determination to give Luna a fighting chance. There's something else you should know, Ethan said after a moment. If Luna recovers fully, we still plan to adopt her. She needs the kind of specialized care and understanding that we can provide. He looked directly at John. But that doesn't mean you and Emily would be excluded from her life. John nodded, acknowledging the generous offer. She deserves the best possible home. After everything I've put her through, I just want her to be happy and safe. Emily moved to stand beside her father, tentatively taking his hand for the first time since Luna's abandonment had come to light. We'll figure this out, she said, unconsciously echoing his earlier words. For Luna. 1 year later, Oakwood's town square bustled with activity as volunteers erected tents and hung banners for the first annual Second Chance Haven Benefit Festival. The late spring sunshine warmed the cobblestones as Amber Mitchell directed the placement of adoption pens, her confident voice carrying across the square. The puppy zone needs to be in the shade, she called to a group of volunteers, and make sure the water stations are accessible from every pen. The shelter's transformation over the past year had been nothing short of miraculous. Following Luna's dramatic rescue and subsequent health crisis, donations had poured in from across the country. What began as support for one German Shepherd's medical bills evolved into a movement to save the shelter that had saved her. The Luna Legacy Fund had not only covered the cost of rebuilding after the fire, but had expanded Second Chance Haven into a state-of-the-art facility with specialized rehabilitation programs for former service animals. Amber paused her work to watch Ethan Wallace lead a demonstration in the center of the square. Luna moved precisely at his side, her silver-flecked muzzle held high, her stance proud despite the slight stiffness in her gait, a permanent reminder of her ordeal. Together, they showed an audience of fascinated children how police dogs were trained to find hidden objects, Luna's focus unwavering despite the distractions around her. "She still loves having a job," Madison commented, appearing at Amber's side with a clipboard of festival schedules. "The doctors didn't think she'd ever work again after that pneumonia." "Luna's always been full of surprises," Amber replied with a smile. "Who would have thought one abandoned dog would change so many lives?" Indeed, Luna's story had rippled throughout Oakwood in unexpected ways. The local police department, inspired by public interest, had reinstated its K-9 program with community funding. The town council had passed stricter animal welfare ordinances. Schools implemented humane education programs featuring Luna's journey from abandonment to heroism. Across the square, Emily Thompson arranged merchandise at the fundraising booth, carefully straightening rows of T-shirts featuring Luna's image above the slogan, "Second Chances Save Lives." At 17, Emily had become Second Chance Haven's most dedicated volunteer, spending every free hour at the shelter and developing a reputation for her skill with traumatized animals. "Need any help there?" called a familiar voice. Emily looked up to see her father approaching, dressed in the dark blue uniform of Second Chance Haven's security team. The position had started as volunteer work, part of John's self-imposed penance, but had evolved into a paid role as the shelter expanded. "I think I'm good," Emily replied, her relationship with her father still tentative, but healing. "Are you on duty already? The festival doesn't officially start for another hour." John nodded. "Wanted to do a security sweep before the crowds arrive." He hesitated, then added, "Your mom said she'll stop by after her last class. She's bringing those cookies that Luna likes." The mention of Sarah brought a small smile to Emily's face. Her parents' marriage hadn't survived the crisis of trust created by Luna's abandonment, but their separation had been amicable, both recognizing that too much damage had been done to rebuild. Sarah had returned to college to finish her master's degree in education, while John focused on his sobriety and rebuilding relationships with his daughter and his former K-9 partner. "Luna will be happy to see her," Emily said. "She always knows when Mom's been baking." As if summoned by her name, Luna appeared with Ethan, her demonstration completed. The German Shepherd spotted John and her tail immediately began wagging, her pace quickening as she approached. Despite everything, Luna's capacity for forgiveness had never wavered. From the moment she'd regained consciousness in the veterinary hospital in Pittsburgh and recognized John's voice, she had welcomed him back into her life without reservation. "There's my girl," John said softly, kneeling to receive Luna's greeting. The German Shepherd pressed against him briefly, accepting a gentle ear scratch before returning to Ethan's side, a perfect balance of acknowledging her past while honoring her present. The arrangement the humans had negotiated during Luna's recovery had evolved naturally into something that served everyone's needs, especially Luna's. The Wallaces had formally adopted her, providing the stable home and specialized care her aging body required. John contributed to her medical expenses and visited regularly. Emily spent weekends at the Wallaces' home, helping with Luna's physical therapy exercises and learning about service dog training from Ethan. "How did the demonstration go?" John asked Ethan. "Flawless, as usual," Ethan replied with pride. "Even with limited duty, she performs better than dogs half her age." Always was an overachiever, John said, the old partnership still evident in his understanding of Luna's character. The festival opened promptly at noon, drawing crowds that exceeded the organizers' expectations. Luna, as the guest of honor, held court in a special meet-and-greet area where children could approach her under supervision. Madison stayed close, monitoring Luna's energy levels and ensuring she didn't become overwhelmed. By mid-afternoon, the local news team arrived for scheduled interviews. Diana Reynolds, whose initial coverage had helped launch Luna's story into the national spotlight, approached Amber with her cameraman. 1 year later, and Luna is still drawing crowds, Diana observed, watching the gathering around the German Shepherd. Shall we do the interview with her in the shot? Amber nodded. Absolutely. This festival is all about her legacy. As they prepared for the segment, Kelly Santos hurried over with exciting news. The online donation tracker just passed $50,000. We've met our goal for the new senior dog wing. Cheers erupted from nearby volunteers. The planned expansion would create a specialized space for older dogs, often the hardest to place, with heated floors, orthopedic beds, and dedicated physical therapy equipment. We're going to call it the Luna Wing, Amber told Diana as the camera began rolling. It seems fitting that a senior dog who's been through so much would inspire a sanctuary for others like her. The interview covered the shelter's remarkable transformation, the community programs that had developed in Luna's wake, and plans for the future. As they wrapped up, Diana posed a final question. Luna's story began with abandonment and nearly ended in tragedy. Yet today, we see a thriving shelter, a united community, and a dog who seems remarkably well-adjusted despite her ordeal. What do you think is the most important lesson in all this? Amber considered the question thoughtfully. I think Luna showed us that second chances aren't just about survival, they're about finding new purpose. She wasn't just rescued, she became a rescuer. She reminded us that our past doesn't have to define our future. As the festival continued into early evening, Luna began showing signs of fatigue. Madison noticed immediately and signaled to Ethan that it was time to take her home. They made their way through the crowd, stopping to let Luna say goodbye to Emily and John. "We'll see you Sunday for her therapy session," Madison confirmed with Emily. The teenager nodded. "I'll bring those new exercises Dr. Wilson suggested for her hip." John bent to give Luna a final pat. "Rest up, partner. You've earned it." As the Wallaces led Luna toward their car, an elderly man stopped them, hat in hand. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly. "I just wanted to thank you and her for what you've done for our town. My grandson was one of those kids she saved from the fire. Our family will never forget that." Ethan nodded, understanding the debt of gratitude. She was just doing what she was trained to do. "No," the man replied, shaking his head. "It was more than training. That dog has a soul." Later that evening, as the festival wound down and volunteers began dismantling booths, Amber found herself alone in the town square with John. They sat on a bench, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and gold. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Amber asked. "When you first saw Luna at the shelter, did you have any idea what would happen?" John shook his head. "I thought my life was over when I abandoned her. I couldn't see any way forward." He gazed across the square where photos of Luna hung from lampposts. "I certainly never imagined she would save the shelter, bring the community together, and somehow, against all odds, help save me too." "Luna has a gift for healing," Amber observed. "Not just surviving trauma, but transforming it into something meaningful." "She always did," John agreed softly. Even back in our police days, she could walk into a room filled with tragedy and somehow bring comfort just by being there. He paused, emotion catching in his throat. I betrayed that gift once. I'm grateful every day for the chance to make it right, even if I spend the rest of my life doing so. At the Wallace home, situated on 3 peaceful acres at the edge of town, Luna settled onto her orthopedic bed near the fireplace. Though the spring evening was mild, Ethan lit a small fire anyway, knowing how the warmth eased Luna's arthritis. Madison joined them, curling up on the sofa with a book while Ethan sat on the floor beside Luna, gently massaging her scarred hip. "Good day?" Madison asked, watching the contentment on both their faces. "The best," Ethan replied. "The doctor in Pittsburgh called while we were at the festival. Luna's last chest X-ray was clear, no lasting damage from the pneumonia." Madison smiled. "Our miracle dog." Luna sighed deeply, resting her head on Ethan's lap. Her journey from police canine to family pet, to abandoned animal to shelter hero, and finally to beloved companion had come full circle. In each phase, she had given everything she had: her loyalty, her courage, her forgiveness. On the mantel above them stood photographs chronicling her extraordinary life. Luna in her police vest with a younger John. Luna with the Thompson family. Luna being carried from the burning shelter. Luna in the hospital with tubes and monitors. Luna at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the rebuilt Second Chance Haven. And most recently, Luna surrounded by the Wallaces, the Thompsons, Amber, and the shelter staff, a family united by their love for one remarkable dog. Outside the window, stars appeared in the darkening sky. Luna watched them through drooping eyelids, her body tired but her spirit peaceful. She had done what all dogs strive to do. She had protected her people. She had served with courage, and she had loved without condition. In return, she had received the greatest gift, a second chance at belonging. In homes throughout Oakwood that night, families told Luna's story to children who had attended the festival. Teachers prepared lesson plans about compassion using her journey as an example. Shelter volunteers went to bed tired but fulfilled, knowing their work was valued by their community. And somewhere, a frightened dog waited in a kennel, not yet knowing that tomorrow might bring their own second chance, inspired by a German shepherd who had shown an entire town how to heal. As Luna drifted to sleep beside the crackling fire, safe between the 2 humans who had given her a new purpose, the circle of comfort she had created expanded outward like ripples in still water, touching lives she would never know, inspiring changes she would never see, and leaving a legacy that would continue long after her time had passed. In the end, the dog who had once looked so devastated after being abandoned had indeed shocked everyone, not by what she suffered, but by what she gave: a template for resilience, a model of forgiveness, and a living reminder that sometimes the most broken beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings. Luna's journey reminds us that it's never too late for redemption. Dear friends, like many of us in our golden years, she faced abandonment after years of loyal service, discarded when her usefulness seemed diminished by age and injury. How many of us have felt that same sting of being set aside after decades of hard work and dedication? Yet Luna's story isn't about the betrayal she suffered, but about the extraordinary resilience she demonstrated. She transformed her pain into purpose, saving lives and healing a community that had once turned its back on her. When life forced her to start over in her senior years, she didn't become bitter, she became better. She formed new bonds without forgetting old loyalties, forgave without conditions, and found joy in serving others despite her own wounds. Luna's legacy speaks directly to our generation. Our worth isn't measured by youth or perfection, but by the hearts we touch and the second chances we embrace. When we face our own winters of abandonment or loss, Remember Luna, the aging German Shepherd who proved that our most meaningful contributions might still lie ahead, if only we have the courage to keep our hearts open. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.